People who had hallucinations. What was the creepiest thing you have seen? Hundreds of insects crawling up my arms while I was paralyzed. Was not a good idea taking sleep pills when 5. This is one of those situations where, if you had 9 lives, you probably used 8 of them depending on which sleeping pills you took. Sounds like Benadryl. It's actually the same ingredient in over-the-counter sleeping pills, and it will give you horrifying hallucinations if you take too many. Antihistamine sleeping pills definitely give you weird dreams. I took 2 last night and had a dream which was a mix of Game of Thrones, Ozark, and a horror movie. It was wild. I don't get visual hallucinations, but I do get auditory ones, usually just a sound effect from a video game. I get glowstone from Minecraft breaking a lot. It's my favorite sound. But when I was over at my grandma's house for spring break, I kept hearing her call my name. I came over and asked why she called me, and she was like, "What? I didn't call you," and I kept hearing it for the next couple of hours. It stopped when I left, but it still freaks me out. Here's a more fun story. I went to a show choir trip and we were staying in a hotel. Suddenly I hear, "This is what my alarm clock sounds like." And then the fire alarm went off. Apparently some kids decided it would be fun to hotbox the hotel room. It's pretty tame, but when I woke up in the middle of the night recently, I clearly saw a huge spider gliding down from my light from the ceiling. I switched the light on rapidly and saw nothing. I even searched the floor and under the bed until I was fully awake and realized I had just been seeing things. Dude, I literally saw the same thing once, but it was a neon green spider crawling towards me. I would have had a panic attack tbh. I have this dream all the time. I used to jump up out of bed and search for it, but after years of it, I finally realized it's all in my head. My creepiest was an auditory hallucination after taking too much Benadryl. Every few minutes I would hear my mom yelling my name along with bursts of a man laughing. Was crazy scary. Had to put the TV on and wait the 4-6 hours it took to wear off. I had some visual hallucinations when I took too much Benadryl one night. I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at millions of tiny spiders crawling all over my shower for a few hours. Me too. Shapes would form out of the spots you get from glancing at a light. They were pink elephants. Ugh. I went to the hospital, it was so freaky. But what happened with the elephants? I hope they are okay somewhere living happy lives. I put the following vision down to deep-seated grief after the death of my mother. It occurred a few nights after her loss and the image of what I saw has never left me. I was in bed just drifting off to sleep when I saw in one corner of the room, near the ceiling, a woman dressed in black in a rocking chair. She had a black crocheted shawl around her head which she held at the chin with one hand. She kept rocking, but did not say a word. I wanted to call out to my husband, who was in another room, but my body was paralyzed. It lasted what seemed like an eternity, but realistically was probably only a minute or two. I was eventually able to throw the quilt back and jump out of bed. My husband comforted me, but that image shook me to the core. I saw a dude with a girl walking in front of me. Girl was normal, so was he, except the part in which he has a black rotating void instead of a head. I once had this dream where I was in the middle of a fancy party but everyone else there was static, as if the time has stopped. The most interesting part about it was that everyone had a rotating void instead of a head. Really dope dream tbh. Better stop watching Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman. A couple months ago, I had this dream where I was walking into this hotel room. The entryway was connected to the kitchen, and there was a wall between the kitchen and the bedroom. I closed the door and had this sense of dread overcome me, so I stood there, still, and waited. Staring straight towards the bedroom, I see this figure slowly creep out from behind the wall, firmly walking forward. Then she pivots and starts walking towards me. She had a void face with tiny specks of bright white light, and it was like looking through a wormhole into space. It was terrifying because of her demeanor, but still pretty cool nonetheless. A long time ago I saw a TV commercial for coffee with John Cleese. In the middle of addressing the camera he suddenly stops, leans forward, and lets out a blood-curdling scream. I almost had a heart attack. He then went back to the regular commercial spiel. Never saw the commercial again. I thought that it was strange, but it was John Cleese, so I assumed it was an intentional thing to mess with the viewer and part of the commercial. I believed that for decades, but occasionally I'd remember it, and it seemed so strange. So one day recently I researched Cleese's commercials from the 80s and found it on YouTube. 1986 Maxwell House Master Blend. Definitely the same commercial. No scream. I have heard more than I have seen, but I've heard satanic growling and men speaking in some Middle Eastern language. I've seen shadow people at night and a man standing above my bed that, when seen, fizzled back into the darkness. Also, one night while laying in bed with my fiancé, his eyes were open and mine were closed. In my mind I saw a glowing blue figure walk out of my room. At that very moment I felt him move and lot up, and I know he saw it too. Only the next morning he told me he saw a shadow, while I saw the true form in my mind, since my eyes were closed. You sound schizophrenic, but most schizophrenics don't believe they are. I've been told that, and believed it for a long time, but then I've had some experiences that other people have seen what I've seen, so at least part of the time it must be more than just my mind. A lot of time we can make connections that aren't there. Religious people don't help our case. Was driving home from a friend's house who lived in a rural area. As I was driving down a 2-lane road I hit the brakes as I thought I saw a bear walk in front of my car. After I looked I realized nothing was there. I proceeded driving and had to suddenly hit the brakes again as I saw a car make an abrupt stop in front of me. I looked again after closing my eyes as a reflex and the car was gone. I felt by this point I was losing my mind, so I proceeded to drive, but as I kept driving I saw something that appeared to be moving in the tall grass on the side of the road. It was keeping pace with my car. Whatever it was looked to be bipedal. When I got home I was freaked out and quickly made a doctor appointment. My entire life I've had these sort of hallucinations in low light settings. My brain essentially fills in what my eyes can't pick up, like everyone else, but my mind is full of terror and paranoia. One night when I was about 8 years old, at my first stay in the psych ward, my brain told me that my pile of laundry in the corner was a vicious looking alien being. Having seen on TV that predators detect movement, I laid perfectly still all night until the sun seeped through the window enough for me to tell the monster was just a pile of clothing. I don't think I've ever been that scared of something imaginary before or since, but I don't drive at night because my eyes still play these tricks on me 20 years later. I hallucinate fairly regularly when I wake up in the middle of the night. It's not sleep paralysis, I can still move. One time, I saw a huge, 16-legged spider dangling from a web on my finger. It was slowly crawling up. I actually felt pain from it. When I tried shaking it off, it wouldn't disappear. Eventually it disappeared, but then I saw tons of gnats in front of me. I batted at them until they disappeared too. These days, I'll wake up to a beautiful, glowing jellyfish flying above my head. I'll touch it, just to make sure it's not real, then go back to sleep. Most disturbing thing was a shadow man and a shadow woman holding me down whilst abusing me, cutting open my abdomen and tearing out my guts, refilling it with stones as the mattress around me dissolved into water. I didn't scream, I was paralyzed, but could only breathe in, not out. So I passed out, and when I woke up I had a bleeding nose. And no, it wasn't sleep paralysis. I was well awake, reading a book when this happened. I was 8 years old. I guess after that, I kinda got used to it, cause some scarier things happened, but they didn't creep me out anymore. Not quite a hallucination, but more so a very vivid dream when partially awake. In this half-awake asleep state my tongue fell off, and a green substance oozed out of it. When I woke all the way up my mouth tasted of blood. I'm guessing I bit my tongue in my sleep and the thoughts followed. Something very similar happened to me, but with my hand. When I woke up my hand was completely numb, because I had been sleeping on it. Freaked me out, because I thought I lost it for real. So when I'm really sick, I get these very creepy hallucinations. The first one was when I was 10, and I just laid on my back and stared at the wall, and it started moving towards me, like it was going to squash me. The second time was at 13 years old, and at the time I was reading a book trilogy called Mistborn, and I would wake up at 4 AM all sweaty, and would start seeing the characters and I would actually say things to them. I would talk in my sleep and I even saw dead characters from the book that I got attached to. It was scary. I was in hospital on 72-hour psych hold. I saw my then 1-year-old son in the ward and freaked out. Throughout my whole stay I was hearing his laugh and my family's voices. I was convinced they were having secret meetings with the staff about me and keeping my son from me. I was wandering around with my ear to walls and trying to see through privacy windows. I got restrained more than once because I was getting so frustrated that I couldn't find my baby. I did a lot of LSD in my late teens, early 20s. One night I was tripping and looked out my ground level window to see a rabbit. Then 2, 3, 4, hundreds. Then they all turned into the shadow rabbit from Watership Down. And by ground level window I mean the bottom of the window was like 5 inches off the ground. I felt like they were all coming to steal my soul. I also had a black light poster of the Grim Reaper. I took it down and taped it up on my window facing out. Then dragged a blanket into my closet to hide. I'm very late, so I hope this doesn't get buried. I have a memory from when I was about 5 to 6 of waking up to a shadowy figure standing and staring at me at the end of my bed. I screamed for my dad, and when he came in the thing disappeared. He told me it was okay, and it was probably a nightmare. As soon as he left, its head reappeared, floating above me. I screamed again, and slept in my parents' bed that night. I don't believe in the supernatural, it's just a distinct memory from when I was young. If anyone can tell me what it could have been, it would be good to know what this experience was. Seeing maggots and other bugs in my food at rehab, I know for a fact I was hallucinating. BC everyone else's food was fine, and I couldn't feel the bugs, only see them. I've heard much creepier though distorted conversations between people I know. Once, while getting undressed, I heard my teacher talking with my friend. I can never really make out what the voices are saying, but it always sounds demonic, since I hallucinate voices I've heard before. TV show characters and YouTubers talked to me as well. I was young and extremely mentally ill, so I did whatever they suggested. I'm so very thankful I have medications now.